The first thing Natalie Brooks heard from the other side of the church doors was laughter. Not music, not bells, not the soft beginning of her sister's wedding march. Laughter. It floated through the stained glass entrance of St. Aurelia's like something sharp wrapped in silk. Rich, bright, careless laughter. The kind that came from people standing in warm light, wearing dry clothes, holding champagne, and pretending cruelty was just honesty with better shoes. Natalie stood outside in the rain, with both hands wrapped around a broken bouquet. White roses, crushed hydrangeas, baby's breath bent from where someone had shoved the arrangement against her chest before shutting the door. Rain slid down her cheeks so coldly that, for one merciful second, she could pretend she was not crying. Through the glass, she could see her mother in a champagne-colored gown, one hand over her mouth as if trying to hide her smile. Her aunt leaned toward her and whispered. A bridesmaid glanced outside, saw Natalie standing there, and laughed harder. And in the middle of that golden, candlelit church, Vanessa Brooks, Natalie's younger sister. The bride stood beneath the floral arch Natalie had spent 9 hours building with aching fingers. Vanessa looked perfect. Of course she did. Natalie had made sure of it. The ivory roses overhead were imported from Ecuador. The hanging orchids had been wired one stem at a time. The aisle was lined with white peonies and silver lanterns. Every petal in that church had passed through Natalie's hands before sunrise. And now she was not allowed inside. Because her family had decided that the florist who made the wedding beautiful would make the photographs ugly. The side door clicked behind her. Locked. Natalie turned, trying the handle once, then twice, even though she knew. Her cousin Madison had smiled while doing it. Vanessa's already stressed, Madison had said, pushing Natalie backward onto the wet church steps. Please don't make this about you. Natalie had looked at the closed door, confused at first. I am her sister. Madison's face had softened just enough to make the insult worse. Exactly. That's why we were trying to protect the family pictures. Then the lock had turned. Now Natalie stood under the gray Boston sky, dress clinging to her body, hair falling loose from its pins. Mud splashed across the hem of the navy dress she had bought on clearance and altered herself. Inside, someone raised a phone and pointed it toward her through the glass. Natalie stepped back. One heel slipped off the wet stone. The bouquet nearly fell from her arms. She caught it against her chest, and a broken rose thorn sliced her palm. That was when the black SUV stopped at the curb. It did not glide to a polite halt like the wedding limousines had. It arrived like a warning. The engine growled low beneath the rain. The church security men near the front steps went still. One of the groomsmen, smoking under the archway, dropped his cigarette and crushed it too quickly beneath his shoe. The rear door opened. A man stepped out without an umbrella. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black suit that looked less like fashion and more like armor. Rain touched his dark hair and rolled off the sharp planes of his face. His jaw was shadowed with stubble. His hands were bare. No wedding ring. No smile. The air around him changed before he said a word. Natalie knew powerful men. Not personally. She had decorated their banquets, delivered sympathy arrangements to their mansions, carried orchids into their hotel suites while they pretended not to see her. But this man was different. He did not look like someone who owned rooms. He looked like someone rooms surrendered to. Two men stepped out behind him, both in dark suits, both silent, both scanning the street instead of the church. The man's eyes moved once across the entrance, the laughing faces behind the glass, the locked side door, the crushed bouquet in Natalie's arms. Then they settled on her. His stare was cold enough to make her forget the rain. "Why are you outside?" he asked. His voice was calm, deep, controlled. Natalie swallowed. She did not know who he was yet, but the church did. She could see it. The groomsman near the archway had gone pale. One of the ushers inside had turned around, mouth parting, as if he had just seen a ghost dressed for a funeral. Natalie lifted her chin because humiliation had already taken enough from her tonight. I was told I would embarrass the pictures. The man's expression did not change. Only his eyes did. They sharpened, by whom Natalie almost laughed. But the sound died before it could become anything. She looked through the glass doors at the family she had spent her life trying to earn. My family? Something dark passed across his face. Behind the glass. Vanessa finally noticed him. Her smile collapsed. The groom, Caleb Whitmore, turned too. His face went rigid. Natalie saw recognition move through the church like a blade. The man glanced down at the flowers in her arms. You made all of this. Natalie looked toward the arch. The aisle. The altar spilling with white blooms. Yes. Were you invited? She hesitated. It was such a simple question. And still, it hurt more than the rain. I was told I was. The man looked at the locked doors, then back at her. What is your name, Natalie Brooks? His gaze lingered on her bleeding palm. Me, Sebastian Ricci. Natalie had heard that name before. Everyone in Boston had, even if they pretended they had not. Sebastian Ricci was not just rich. Rich people appeared in society pages, smiled at charity galas, and bought silence with donations. Sebastian Ricci was whispered about in restaurants after midnight. His name appeared in federal investigations that led nowhere. His black SUVs were known from the harbor to New York. Men who crossed him either left the country, lost everything, or simply stopped being discussed. He was a mafia boss dressed as a wedding guest, and he was looking at Natalie as if the locked church doors had personally offended him. I should go, she whispered. No, he said. One word. No anger in it. No softness either. Just decision. He stepped past her toward the entrance. One of the ushers inside hurried forward, trying to open the doors first. But Sebastian reached them before anyone could perform obedience. His hands closed around the brass handles. For a second, through the rain-streaked glass, every face inside the church froze. Vanessa's lips parted. Natalie's mother touched her pearls. Caleb Whitmore looked like a man watching a loaded gun turn in his direction. Sebastian pulled the doors open. Warm candlelight spilled into the rain. The laughter died so completely that Natalie could hear water dripping from the church roof onto the stone steps. Sebastian turned back to her. He did not offer his arm like a gentleman. He extended his hand like a command. They wanted photographs, he said quietly. Let's give them one they'll remember. Natalie stared at his hand. The rain blurred the church behind him. The bouquet trembled against her chest. Every instinct told her not to step closer to a man like him. And yet, behind him, her family was watching, waiting for her to shrink. Again, Natalie placed her wounded hand in Sebastian Ricci's. His fingers closed around hers, warm and firm, careful enough not to press the cut. Then the most feared man in the church walked Natalie Brooks down the aisle. Not behind the bridesmaids. Not through the side entrance. Straight down the center. The same aisle she had lined with flowers. The same aisle her family had decided she was not pretty enough to be seen in. Every head turned. Phones rose. Whispers broke and vanished. Sebastian moved slowly, deliberately, as if each step was a punishment delivered in silence. His men remained by the doors. The organist forgot to play. The priest lowered his book. Natalie could feel the eyes on her dress, her curves, her wet hair, the mud on her hem. Shame tried to climb up her throat. Then Sebastian's thumb pressed once against the back of her hand. Not affection. A reminder. Do not lower your head. So she didn't. Vanessa stood at the altar with murder in her eyes. Her veil glowed under the candles. Diamonds flashed at her throat. Her makeup was flawless. Her body slim. Her smile gone. "Natalie," she said through her teeth. "What are you doing?" Sebastian answered before Natalie could. "Entering the wedding." Vanessa's gaze flicked to him and softened instantly into terror disguised as charm. "Mr. Ricci." There must be some misunderstanding. She was only supposed to help with flowers. Sebastian looked at the arch above her. She did. The church remained silent. He guided Natalie to the front pew. Her mother stood halfway, panic bright in her eyes. "Mr. Ricci, please." We didn't mean Sebastian did not look at her. He reached into his jacket, withdrew a white pocket square, and wrapped it around Natalie's bleeding palm. The gesture was so intimate, so public, that a ripple moved through the guests. "Sit," he told Natalie. She did. He remained standing beside her for a moment, his body between her and the altar. Then he turned to the priest. "Continue." Caleb cleared his throat. "Sebastian," he said carefully. "This is a family ceremony." Sebastian's smile was almost invisible. "It is now." The ceremony continued because no one in that church was brave enough to stop it. Natalie sat in the front pew, soaked and shaking. While her sister married Caleb Whitmore beneath flowers, Natalie had chosen to make Vanessa feel loved. Every vow sounded wrong. Every candle seemed too bright. Every time Vanessa smiled for the guests. Natalie saw the girl who used to steal frosting from their father's birthday cakes and blame her. The girl who cried prettily and made their mother believe Natalie had always been difficult. The girl who had learned young that beauty could be a weapon if everyone agreed to be wounded by it. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, applause filled the church. But the sound was brittle. People clapped while watching Sebastian. He had not sat with Caleb's family. He had not moved to the groom's side. He sat beside Natalie Brooks as if that was the only seat in the church worth taking. At the reception, the humiliation became a scandal. The Whitmore estate sat above the harbor. All marble steps, glowing windows, and white tents trembling under rain. Champagne flowed beneath crystal chandeliers. A string quartet played near a wall of flowers Natalie had built before dawn. Reporters, politicians, bankers, and men with private security moved through the room, pretending not to notice each other. Natalie tried to stay near the service hallway. Sebastian did not allow it. He walked beside her into the ballroom, his black jacket draped over her shoulders, his hand hovering near the small of her back without touching. "Stop doing that," she said quietly. His eyes flicked down. "Doing what? Making everyone think I belong next to you." He looked across the ballroom. The crowd parted before him without being asked. "You do at the moment." "At the moment, yes." She looked at him. His expression was unreadable. "Do you always make women feel disposable after rescuing them?" "No," he said. "I rarely rescue anyone." That should not have made her pulse change. It did. At the head table, Vanessa watched them with a smile tight enough to crack glass. Caleb leaned close to her, whispering something, but his eyes kept returning to Sebastian. Natalie noticed the fear there, not jealousy, fear. "You weren't really invited as a friend," she said. Sebastian glanced at her. "No." The answer was too honest. Before Natalie could ask more, her mother appeared in front of them with a glass of champagne trembling in her hand. "Natalie," she said in a low, furious voice wrapped in sweetness. "Could we speak privately?" Sebastian stared at her until her smile faltered. Natalie removed his jacket from her shoulders. "It's fine." "It isn't," he said. She met his eyes. "I said it's fine." For the first time, Something like interest broke through his coldness. He stepped back half an inch. Natalie followed her mother behind a floral partition near the terrace doors. The second they were hidden from the main room, her mother's face changed. "What did you think you were doing?" Natalie stared at her. Rain tapped against the glass behind them. "I was standing outside after you locked me out." Her mother's jaw tightened. "We were trying to avoid a scene. You made one." "No. You made one by walking in with him," like some desperate. Natalie waited. Her mother stopped just before the word. It still landed. For years, Natalie had endured the careful cruelty. The sighs when she tried on dresses. The family photos where someone always suggested she stand in the back. The jokes about eating too much cake when she was the one baking for everyone. The way they called her sensitive after slicing her open. But something had changed outside that church. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was Sebastian Ricci's hand closing around hers. Maybe it was simply that she was tired. "I decorated your daughter's wedding," Natalie said. "I paid for half the flowers because Vanessa said Caleb's family would judge her if anything looked cheap. I stayed up all night fixing the arch after the delivery truck broke down. And you locked me out." Her mother's eyes flashed. Vanessa needed one perfect day. Natalie's laugh came out broken. "And I ruined perfect." Her mother looked away. That was answer enough. Behind them, a man's voice said, "Mrs. Brooks." Natalie turned. Sebastian stood there. He had heard. Of course he had. Her mother went pale. Sebastian's gaze did not leave her face. "Your daughter will not be spoken to that way again." Mrs. Brooks stiffened. "With respect. Mr. Ricci. She is my daughter." "Yes," he said calmly. "That seems to be the problem." Natalie inhaled sharply. Her mother's mouth open. But Sebastian had already turned to Natalie. "Come." Natalie did not move. "I'm not your dog." A dangerous silence fell. Her mother looked horrified. Sebastian looked at Natalie as if she had done something no one had done in a long time. Then he inclined his head slightly. "Walk with me." That was worse somehow. Not because it was softer. Because it wasn't. It was controlled. Respectful. Still commanding. Natalie followed because she chose to. Not because he ordered her. And Sebastian seemed to know the difference. They stepped onto the covered terrace. Rain fell beyond the stone railing. Silver under the estate lights. Black SUVs lined the drive below. Men in dark coats watched the property from discreet positions that looked casual only to people who did not understand danger. Sebastian stood beside Natalie without speaking. For a while, the silence felt safer than the ballroom. Then he said, "Why did you do all this for them?" She kept her eyes on the rain. "Because my father loved weddings." Sebastian waited. Natalie hated that. Most people rushed to fill silence. Sebastian used it like a locked room. He owned a little flower shop in South Boston. She said, "Marigold thorn." He said flowers were proof that soft things could survive being cut. Her throat tightened. After he died, my mother wanted to sell it. Vanessa said it was embarrassing. I kept it alive. And they still treat you like that. They treat me like that because I let them. Sebastian's eyes moved to her. Natalie looked back before she lost courage. "Don't mistake kindness for stupidity." "Mr. Ricci." His mouth curved slightly. Not a smile. Something more dangerous. "I haven't." Before Natalie could answer, glass exploded behind them. The sound tore through the terrace like a gunshot. Because it was one. Sebastian moved before Natalie could understand what was happening. His arm locked around her waist. He pulled her down behind a stone column as screams erupted inside the ballroom. Another shot cracked through the rain. A champagne tower shattered. Guests dropped to the floor. The string quartet stopped mid-note. Natalie's heart slammed against her ribs. Sebastian's body covered hers. Hard and warm. his hand cradling the back of her head as shards of glass skittered across the terrace. "Stay down," he said. "No panic. No fear. Only command." His men surged across the ballroom. Black suits moved like shadows. Someone shouted Caleb's name. A woman screamed for security. Natalie tried to lift her head. Sebastian pressed her lower. "Were they shooting at you?" she gasped. His eyes met hers. For 1 second, she saw the answer before he spoke. "No." Another shot struck the column above them. Stone dust rained into Natalie's hair. Sebastian's jaw tightened. "They were shooting at you." The world narrowed to rain. Broken glass. And his hand on her neck. Natalie could not breathe. "Why would anyone shoot at me?" Sebastian looked toward the ballroom, where Vanessa was crouched beneath the head table, staring at Natalie with something that looked far too close to guilt. "I intend to find out." He lifted Natalie into his arms as if she weighed nothing. "Put me down," she whispered, half terrified, half furious. "No, this is not romantic. I'm aware." "Then why are you carrying me?" "Because whoever wants you dead is still breathing." He carried her through the chaos. Cameras flashed. Guests screamed. His bodyguards formed a wall around them. Caleb Whitmore shouted something from across the room. But Sebastian did not slow down. Natalie saw Vanessa rise from beneath the table. White dress, stained with champagne. Eyes locked on the broken bouquet, still lying near the terrace doors. Not on Natalie. On the flowers. Then Sebastian pushed through the service entrance into the storm. Black SUVs roared to life. A door opened. He placed Natalie inside, followed her in, and slammed the door shut. The vehicle shot forward before she could ask where they were going. Inside the SUV, the world smelled like leather, rain, and gunpowder. Natalie pressed herself against the far door. Still shaking, Sebastian sat across from her, his eyes on the window, one hand holding a phone, the other stained with blood. Her stomach dropped. "You re-hurt. It isn't mine." That did not comfort her. "Where are you taking me?" "Somewhere controlled." "Controlled by you?" "Yes." She stared at him. Then no. His gaze returned to her. Most men would have looked annoyed. Sebastian looked almost fascinated. "No, you don't get to drag me into your car. Tell me. People are shooting at me." And then answer every question like a locked door. His eyes darkened. "If I wanted to lock doors around you, Natalie, you wouldn't know where the walls were." Fear moved through her. So did something else. Something she hated herself for feeling, because his voice was not loud. It did not need to be. "I don't belong in your world," she said. "No," he agreed. "But my world has noticed you." The SUV drove through rain-slick Boston streets. Past harbor lights smeared across the windows. Natalie wrapped Sebastian's jacket tighter around herself and tried not to look at the blood on his cuff. At last, they entered an underground garage beneath a building with no name. Elevators opened only after a retinal scan. Men with earpieces lowered their eyes when Sebastian passed. He took Natalie to a penthouse that looked out over the city like a throne room made of glass and shadow. There were no family photographs. No warmth, just black marble, steel, expensive silence, and stormlight moving across the walls. A woman doctor was waiting inside. Natalie refused to sit until Sebastian said, "She checks your hand or I do." The doctor wrapped Natalie's cut palm, checked her for glass, and left as quietly as she came. Sebastian poured whiskey he did not drink. Natalie stood near the window, watching lightning fold over the harbor. "You knew something would happen at that wedding," she said. Sebastian's shoulders remained still. "Yes, The answer hit harder than denial would have. You knew, and you let me walk into it. I didn't know you existed this morning. That should have helped. It did not. But you knew the wedding was dangerous. I knew Caleb Whitmore was dangerous. Natalie turned. My sister just married him. Yes. Her voice lowered. What is he? Sebastian looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, a polished man from a dirty family. A groom who smiles for cameras while selling access to people who bury witnesses in rivers. Natalie's breath caught. No. Sebastian's expression did not soften. Yes. Vanessa wouldn't, she would. He said. The certainty in his voice made her angry. You don't know my sister. I know ambition. It wears different perfume. But the smell is the same. Natalie crossed her arms over herself. Why were you there? Sebastian did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice had lost a fraction of its ice. Caleb's father was part of a deal that got my brother killed. The storm flashed white behind him. Natalie went still. Your brother Lorenzo. He looked at the city. Not her. He trusted the wrong men. Caleb's father was one of them. Were you going to kill him at the wedding? Sebastian looked back. If I had, you would have heard fewer vows. She should have been disgusted. She was. And yet, the terrible honesty of it held her still. You're saying my sister's wedding was a trap. I'm saying it was a stage. I came to see who stepped into the light, and I did. His eyes moved over her face. You were thrown into it. A phone vibrated on the table. Sebastian answered. Natalie heard only fragments. Find the shooter. No police. Get the church footage. Then silence. His gaze sharpened as he listened. What flowers? Natalie's pulse changed. Sebastian looked at her. Slowly. He ended the call. What? She asked. The bouquet you were holding outside. My men recovered it. The broken one. Yes. And his face became unreadable again. There was a drive hidden in the stems. Natalie stared at him. No. Natalie. No. Her voice rose. I made that bouquet. There was nothing inside. Someone placed it there after you were locked out. She backed away. You think I knew? I think someone wanted me to think you knew. The room seemed to tilt. Rain moved in silver lines down the glass. Natalie thought of Vanessa's eyes after the shooting. Not on her. On the flowers. Her sister had known. The realization was so ugly that Natalie rejected it before it could take shape. Vanessa wouldn't put me in danger. Sebastian's silence was crueler than argument. Natalie looked at him sharply. Don't you? I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. He stepped closer. She stepped back. His eyes dropped to the movement. He stopped immediately. That restraint unsettled her more than pursuit. I am not your enemy, he said. You are not my friend either. No. Then what am I to you? His answer. Took too long. A problem. Natalie laughed once. Bitter and breathless. Good. Finally something honest. Sebastian's jaw flexed. And an answer. He added. She looked at him. He turned toward the table, picked up a black tablet, and tapped the screen. Footage appeared. St. Aurelius' side hallway. 15 minutes before the ceremony, Natalie saw herself carrying the bouquet toward the entrance. She saw Madison stop her, saw her mother glance around, saw Vanessa in her wedding gown whisper something into Madison's ear. Then Madison shoved Natalie backward. Natalie watched herself stumble, watched the bouquet fall, watched Vanessa bend as if fixing her train. Her white-gloved hand moved quickly toward the broken stems. The footage blurred slightly. Then the drive was inside. Natalie could not move. The room became too quiet. Sebastian watched her face. Not the screen. Natalie's throat closed. She knew someone would come after it. She whispered, Yes. She put it on me. Yes. The word broke something. Natalie sat down because her knees stopped trusting her. The family she had defended for years had not merely excluded her. They had used her, not as a sister, as a hiding place, as a body nobody would suspect or mourn loudly enough. Sebastian crossed the room, but stopped before he reached her. His hand lifted slightly, then curled into a fist at his side, almost touching, not touching. That restraint was the first mercy he gave her. I need to know what's on that drive, he said. Natalie looked up. Tears blurred him into shadow. Of course you do. His eyes narrowed. That wasn't indifference. It sounded close. I don't comfort well. No, she whispered. I noticed. Something moved across his face. Quick and buried. I can protect you. From the people shooting at me, yes. From my family, his silence answered. Natalie wiped her face with her uninjured hand. I don't want revenge. That's because you haven't tasted it. I don't want to become like you. Sebastian leaned down just enough that the space between them became dangerous. No, Natalie. You don't want to admit that part of you already knows they deserve to lose something. The words entered her like a flame. She hated him for being right. Before she could answer, the penthouse lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. For one heartbeat, there was only rain. Then red emergency lights flooded the walls. Sebastian moved. He drew a gun from beneath the table and stepped in front of Natalie. Behind me, this time, she obeyed. Because the elevator doors had opened, and 3 armed men stepped into the penthouse, wearing the uniforms of Sebastian's own security. The first shot cracked across the room. Sebastian fired back without flinching. Natalie dropped behind the sofa, hands over her ears as glass burst from the bar. The men moved fast, but Sebastian moved as if violence had been built into his bones. Calm, preciso, terrifying. One man fell. Another slammed into the wall. The third lunged toward Natalie. She grabbed the nearest thing she could reach, a heavy crystal vase, and swung with both hands. It shattered against his temple. He dropped. Silence returned in pieces. Sebastian turned. For the first time since she met him, he looked shaken, not afraid for himself. For her, Natalie stood breathing hard, vase stem still clutched in her hand. Sebastian crossed to her so quickly, she barely saw him move. His hand closed around her wrist, checking for cuts. Are you hurt? No. His eyes searched her face. Are you sure I said no? His grip tightened, then loosened as if he had to force himself to remember she was not his to hold. The red lights made his face look carved from blood and stone. Natalie whispered, "Those were your men. They were wearing my men's faces." What does that mean? It means Caleb has help inside my house. The words chilled the room. Betrayal. Not from her world. From his. Sebastian looked toward the bodies, then back at Natalie. We leave now. We're a place no one alive knows about. His safe house was not a mansion. It was worse. It was a chapel. Abandoned. Hidden at the edge of the Massachusetts coast, where pine trees bent under ocean wind and the road disappeared into fog. The building had once belonged to a private Catholic retreat, now closed, forgotten, and secretly owned by Sebastian Ricci through 3 companies and a dead man's signature. Inside, candles burned along stone walls. A small bedroom had been built behind the old sacristy. Security monitors glowed beside antique religious icons. The air smelled of salt, dust, and wax. Natalie stood in the center aisle, looking up at the cracked ceiling. You hide in churches. Sebastian removed his wet coat. No one searches for monsters in holy places. She looked at him. Do you think you're a monster? He met her eyes. I think people use that word when they want to pretend men like me are rare. She had no answer. For 2 days, the world outside became smaller and more dangerous. News channels replayed footage of Sebastian walking Natalie down the aisle. Social media named her the mystery woman in Ricci's coat. Wedding guests leaked videos. Some called it romantic. Others called it scandalous. Her family released a statement saying Natalie had struggled emotionally for years and that they were concerned for her well-being. Natalie read the statement once. Then she turned off the phone Sebastian had given her and placed it face down on the altar. He watched from the back pew. "Say it," she said. "Say what? That you told me so?" "I don't enjoy being right about that." She looked at him. "You enjoy being right about everything." "Most things." Despite herself, a tiny laugh escaped. Sebastian went still, as if the sound had done something dangerous to him. Natalie noticed. So did he. After that, something shifted. Not softened, never that quickly, but sharpened. Sebastian no longer looked at her like a problem alone. He looked at her like a question he wanted to solve and feared answering. He worked from the chapel at all hours. Men came and went silently. Maps appeared on tables. Photos of Caleb Whitmore, Vanessa, the rival Belandi family, and Sebastian's own lieutenants covered the wall behind the old choir loft. Natalie learned pieces. The hidden drive contained shipping manifests, bank transfers, and surveillance clips proving Caleb had sold Ricci harbor routes to Victor Belandi, the rival boss responsible for Lorenzo Ricci's murder. Caleb planned to give Belandi legal access through a political marriage, protected by the Brooks family's public innocence and the Whitmore's respectable name. But the drive also contained something more dangerous. A copy of Sebastian's father's original inheritance document, the Ricci docs. The heart of Sebastian's empire had not been left fully to Sebastian. Half had been left in trust to Lorenzo's future family. Lorenzo had died unmarried, or so everyone believed. Caleb claimed to have proof that Lorenzo had a hidden child somewhere. If true, Sebastian's enemies could use the child as leverage to split the Ricci empire apart. Natalie listened from the aisle, arms crossed. "A child?" she asked. Sebastian's face closed. "I don't know if it's real, but if it is, then my brother left behind someone every predator in my world will try to own." Natalie's chest tightened. For the first time, she saw beneath the black suit and cold eyes. Not softness, wound. "What was he like?" she asked. Sebastian looked away. "Better than me." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I give." She stepped closer. "Did he like flowers?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "No." Natalie almost smiled. "Good. I was worried you were going to say something poetic." Sebastian stared at her. Then, impossibly, his mouth curved. Barely. But it changed the entire chapel. He hated lilies. Sebastian said. Then he had taste. He said they smelled like expensive funerals. Natalie looked at the altar where white lilies from the wedding had been placed in a vase by one of Sebastian's men. Probably as a gesture no one understood. He wasn't wrong. Sebastian looked at the flowers, then at hair. "Why did your father name the shop Marigold Thorn?" "Because my mother wanted something pretty. My father wanted something honest." "Which one are you?" Natalie held his gaze. "The thorn." His eyes dropped briefly to her mouth. The air tightened. He took one step closer. So did she. Then his phone rang. The moment shattered. Sebastian answered with a curse under his breath. Natalie turned away. Heart beating too fast. Danger was easier when it carried guns. Harder when it stood 3 feet away and almost touched your face. That night, Natalie could not sleep. Rain hammered the chapel windows. Wind pressed against the old stone, like something trying to get in. She found Sebastian in the sanctuary at 3:12 a.m., sitting alone in the front pew, shirt sleeves rolled up, tattoos visible along his forearms. A pistol rested beside him on the wood. He did not turn. "You walk quietly," he said. "You listen like a criminal." "I am a criminal. At least you self-aware." He looked at her then. The candlelight caught the exhaustion beneath his eyes. Natalie sat one pew behind him, leaving space because space mattered with men like Sebastian. Too little, and she might forget fear. Too much, and she might mistake distance for safety. "Why did you really open the doors?" she asked. He was silent for so long she thought he would not answer. Then he said, "Because I know what it is to be shut out by blood." Natalie's voice softened despite herself. "Your family? My father thought fear was better than love. He trained sons like weapons and called it legacy." Sebastian's jaw tightened. Lorenzo tried to leave. "I stayed. Guess which one survived?" Natalie looked at his profile. "That isn't your fault." His laugh was quiet and empty. "You say that like guilt cares about logic." She felt that too deeply. "My father died carrying flower crates into the shop during a storm," she said. "Heart attack. I was supposed to be there. I had stayed late doing centerpieces for Vanessa's college charity event because she forgot to order them." Sebastian turned slightly. Natalie's eyes burned. "For years, I thought, if I kept helping them, kept proving I was useful, maybe it would mean his death wasn't wasted." And now Natalie looked at the altar. "Now I think I confused love with labor." Sebastian absorbed that in silence. Then he stood. Slowly. He walked to her pew and sat beside her. Not touching. Close enough that warmth moved between them. "You are not labor," he said. The words were simple. They should not have broken her. But they did. Natalie lowered her head. And this time, when tears came, she did not hide them fast enough. Sebastian lifted his hand. Stopped. His fingers hovered beside her cheek, close enough that she felt the heat of him. Then he lowered his hand. "Why did you stop?" she whispered. His voice was rougher. "Because if I touch you right now, it won't be only comfort." Natalie's breath caught. The storm filled the silence. She should have moved away. She didn't. Sebastian looked at her like restraint was costing him something. Then headlights swept across the stained glass. Both of them turned. A car had arrived outside. Sebastian reached for the gun. His men moved before he spoke. But the person dragged into the chapel minutes later was not an assassin. It was Vanessa. Her wedding makeup was gone. Her hair was disheveled beneath a silk scarf. Her white coat was splashed with mud. She looked small in the candlelight. But Natalie knew better. Vanessa Brooks had always known how to look like the victim while holding the knife. Natalie. Vanessa sobbed. Natalie stood. Sebastian rose beside her. Silent and lethal. Vanessa's eyes flicked to him. Then back to her sister. "I didn't have a choice." Natalie's hands curled. "About locking me outside or putting the drive in my flowers," Vanessa flinched. "I was protecting you." Natalia stared. The chapel became so quiet, even Sebastian's men seemed to stop breathing. "Try again," Natalie said. Vanessa's tears spilled prettily. "Caleb told me it was insurance. He said Sebastian had dangerous enemies. He said if anything went wrong, nobody would search you because you were innocent." Natalie laughed once. The sound was hollow. "You mean because nobody looks at me?" Vanessa stepped closer. Sebastian's hand moved slightly. "A warning." Vanessa stopped. "I didn't know they would shoot at you. But you knew it could hurt me. I knew Caleb would leave me if I refused." There it was. Not fear. Vanity. Natalie felt the last thread snap quietly inside her. "You chose a man over your sister." Vanessa's face hardened through the tears. You don't understand what it's like to finally be chosen. Natalie took the hit. She let it land. Then she said, "You rewrite. I know what it's like to be used." Vanessa's eyes flashed. "Don't act superior. You were happy when he walked you down that aisle. Everyone saw it." Poor Natalie finally had a powerful man look at her. Sebastian's expression went deadly. Natalie spoke before he could. "Be careful." "Vanessa." Her sister smiled through wet eyes. "Or what? Your mafia boyfriend will punish me." Sebastian stepped forward. Natalie touched his arm. He stopped. Not because Vanessa mattered, because Natalie did. The realization moved through the room like a held breath. Vanessa saw it too. Jealousy twisted her face. Then she reached into her coat. Every gun in the chapel lifted. Vanessa froze. Sobbing. "It's paper," she cried. "It's just paper." Sebastian nodded once. One of his men took the envelope from her hand and gave it to him. He opened it. His face changed. Only slightly. But Natalie had learned enough to see it. "What is it?" she asked. Sebastian looked at Vanessa. "Where did you get this Caleb safe?" Vanessa whispered, "He has copies. He's going to meet Belandi tomorrow night at the old Whitmore greenhouse. He said the child is real." Sebastian went still. Natalie's skin chilled. Vanessa looked at Natalie. "I can help you. Both of you. But I need protection." Natalie almost could not believe it. "You came here to trade." "I came here because Caleb scares me." "And Sebastian doesn't," Vanessa swallowed. "He scares everyone." Sebastian looked at Natalie. This could be a trap. Natalie did not look away from her sister. "It is." Vanessa's eyes widened. Natalie stepped closer. "You never come empty-handed unless you want someone to reach." For the first time, Vanessa looked truly afraid. Not of Sebastian. Of being seen. Natalie turned to him. "What's in the envelope?" He handed it to her. Inside was a copy of an old birth record. A child named Luca. Mother unknown. Father Lorenzo Ricci. There was also a photograph of a little boy standing outside a foster agency, holding a paper flower. Natalie's breath caught. A paper flower. Folded from yellow receipt paper. She knew that fold. Her father had taught it to children who came into the shop with no money to buy real blooms. At the bottom of the photograph, written in blue ink, was an address. Marigold Thorn. Natalie looked up slowly. Sebastian's eyes had gone black. "What is that?" he asked. Natalie could barely speak. "My father knew him." The chapel seemed to tilt. Vanessa's expression shifted too quickly. Guilt. Then, calculation. Natalie saw it. "Vanessa." She whispered. "What did you do?" Her sister backed away. "I didn't do anything." Sebastian's voice cut through the room. "Lock the doors." Vanessa bolted. She made it 3 steps before Sebastian's men caught her. But the trap had already begun. The chapel windows exploded inward. Smoke filled the sanctuary. Men shouted. Natalie heard Sebastian call her name. Then the world became white noise. Gunfire. And hands dragging her backward through the sacristy door. She fought. Kicked. Screamed. A cloth pressed over her mouth. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Sebastian Ricci coming through the smoke, with blood on his shirt and murder in his eyes. Natalie woke to the smell of wet soil. For a moment, she thought she was back in her father's shop after a delivery. Lying on the floor between buckets of roses and eucalyptus, then she opened her eyes. Glass ceiling, iron beams, rain streaking down above her. The old Whitmore greenhouse. She was tied to a chair in the center aisle, surrounded by dying orchids and rusted heating pipes. Her wrists ached. Her mouth was dry. One side of her face burned where someone had struck her. Caleb Whitmore stood near a work table, still handsome in that expensive, empty way. His wedding ring glinted under the greenhouse lights. Vanessa sat on a bench behind him, crying silently. For herself, Natalie assumed. Caleb smiled when he saw Natalie awake. Good. I was worried Vanessa's family fragility was genetic. Natalie forced herself to breathe. Where is the boy? Caleb's smile thinned. So Sebastian told you? No, Natalie said. You just did. His eyes hardened. Vanessa looked away. Natalie turned toward her sister. You helped them take me. Vanessa sobbed. I didn't know he would hurt you. Natalie stared at her. You never know. Somehow you were always standing beside the person who does. Caleb crossed the greenhouse and gripped Natalie's chin. She refused to flinch. You're going to tell Sebastian you have the original record? You're going to ask him to come alone. Then you're going to sign a statement saying, Richie kidnapped you, coerced you, and murdered 2 men at the wedding. Natalie laughed softly. It surprised even her. Caleb's grip tightened. What's funny, you really don't know him. The slap came fast. Pain burst across her cheek. Vanessa gasped. Natalie tasted blood and lifted her head again. Caleb leaned close. I know men like him. Possessive, violent, predictable. Give them something they think is theirs. And they walked straight into the cage. Natalie looked him in the eyes. I'm not his. The greenhouse doors opened. Cold rain blew in. A man entered with silver hair, a dark coat, and a face like old cruelty. Victor Belandi, even tied to a chair. Natalie felt the room bow around him. So that is the florist, Belandi said. Caleb stepped back. Belandi circled Natalie slowly. Sebastian Ricci brought half of Boston to its knees over you. I expected more. Natalie's cheek throbbed. She smiled faintly. People usually do. Belandi paused, then laughed. I see why he likes you. He doesn't like me. No, Belandi said softly. That would be safer. He leaned close enough for her to smell expensive cologne and cigarettes. Men like Sebastian do not like. They hunger. They deny. They punish themselves for wanting. Then, when the world touches what they want, they burn cities and call it justice. Natalie's heart beat harder, because somewhere deep down, she knew Sebastian was coming, and that terrified her more than being alone. Belandi straightened. Call him. Caleb lifted a phone to Natalie's ear. It rang once, twice. Then Sebastian's voice answered. Natalie. Her name sounded different in his mouth now. Not cold. Not soft. Worse. Controlled by fear, Caleb held the phone closer. Natalie looked at the glass ceiling. Rain trembling overhead. Sebastian, she said. Silence. Then, where are you hurt? Not are you hurt. Where? Her throat tightened. Don't come. Caleb slammed his fist into the table. Natalie flinched, but kept speaking. It's a trap. Sebastian's voice lowered. I know. Then don't come. Another silence. I'm already here. Every light in the greenhouse went out. For one breath, there was only rain on glass. Then the headlights came. Black SUVs surrounded the greenhouse from every side. Beams cutting through the storm. Men shouted. Guns lifted. Glass walls glowed with moving shadows. Caleb cursed. Belandi smiled. The front doors opened. Sebastian Ricci walked in alone. Rain soaked his black coat. Blood darkened one side of his shirt. His face was calm. Too calm. And his eyes found Natalie first. Everything else in the room disappeared from him. Natalie felt it. So did everyone else. Belandi clapped once. Slowly. Lorenzo would be ashamed. Sebastian did not look at him. Natalie, he said. Look at me. She did. His gaze moved over the bruise on her cheek. Something ancient and violent woke in his expression. Caleb pressed a gun to Natalie's temple. Sebastian stopped. There, Caleb said. Predictable. Sebastian finally looked at him. You should have run after the wedding. Caleb laughed, but his hand shook. You're going to transfer the dock shares, destroy the drive, and publicly confess to attacking my family. No. Caleb shoved the gun harder against Natalie. Sebastian's eyes flickered. Only once. But Caleb saw it. So, did Natalie. Love, she realized, did not make Sebastian gentle. It made him more dangerous. Because now he had something to lose. Belandi stepped forward. The girl for the Empire. Simple trade. Sebastian's voice was quiet. The Empire can be rebuilt. Natalie's breath stopped. Belandi's smile faded. You would give up the docks, Sebastian looked at Natalie. No, Caleb snarled. Then what are you saying? Sebastian's eyes stayed on hers. I'm saying there is no trade where she is currency. For the first time, Natalie's fear broke into something unbearable. Not relief. Not exactly. Something too large for the room. Caleb's patience snapped. He pulled Natalie against him, using her body as a shield, and dragged her backward toward the rows of dying flowers. Sebastian moved one step. Caleb fired. The bullet struck Sebastian high in the shoulder. Natalie screamed. Sebastian staggered but did not fall. His men surged outside. Belandi shouted orders. The greenhouse erupted. Glass shattered overhead as gunfire cracked through the storm. Rain poured in. Orchids exploded from their pots. Natalie threw her weight sideways, driving Caleb off balance. The gun slipped from her temple. She remembered the thorn wire hidden beneath every wedding bouquet stem. Her father's rule. Beauty needs structure. She twisted her bound wrists against the floral wire on the chair. Pain sliced her skin. The rope loosened. Caleb grabbed her hair. Natalie slammed the back of her head into his face. He cursed and stumbled. Sebastian crossed the greenhouse like judgment. Caleb raised the gun again. Natalie kicked over a propane heater. Fire flashed across the wet floor in a low blue line, separating Belandi's men from Sebastian's salons. The sprinklers burst to life. Rain fell inside and out. Natalie tore free, just as Caleb lunged for her. Sebastian reached them first. What happened next was fast, brutal, and mercifully blurred by water and shadow. Sebastian disarmed Caleb, drove him to the ground, and held him there with one knee against his chest. Caleb gasped beneath him. Sebastian pressed the gun under his jaw. Natalie froze. Sebastian. He did not look away from Caleb. You put a gun to her head. Caleb wheezed. Natalie stepped closer. Shaking. Sebastian. This time, he looked at her. His eyes were not human in that moment. They were grief, rage, fear, possession, everything he had denied, everything he had controlled. Natalie walked through broken glass and rain until she stood beside him. If you do it, she whispered, he wins one last thing from you. Sebastian's hand tightened on the gun. Caleb trembled. The greenhouse burned in blue fragments behind them. Natalie reached down and placed her hand over Sebastian's slow. Not pulling, just touching. His breath changed. Slowly, violently. He lowered the gun. Caleb collapsed, sobbing. Sebastian stood, turned, and pulled Natalie into his arms. Not gently, not carefully, like a man catching the only thing left between him and ruin. For 1 second, she let him. Then she pulled back enough to look at his shoulder. Uri bleeding. His hand rose to her bruised cheek. This time he touched her. His thumb hovered first, then brushed the edge of the bruise with unbearable care. So are you. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Inside, Vanessa stood soaked beneath the broken glass, mascara streaking her face. Natalie looked at her sister. Vanessa opened her mouth. No words came. For once, there was no performance left. Only the wreckage of every choice she had made. Natalie turned away. Not because forgiveness had arrived, because the need for it had finally left. 3 weeks later, the story had become impossible to bury. Caleb Whitmore was arrested after federal agents received anonymous evidence from 3 different sources, none traceable to Sebastian Ricci. Victor Belandi disappeared from Boston before dawn and was found 2 days later alive, handcuffed to the gates of a private airfield with enough documents taped to his chest to destroy half his alliances. The press called it the Whitmore wedding scandal. Society blogs called it the Ricci florist affair. Natalie called it the week she stopped apologizing for taking up space. Her mother called once, then twice, then sent flowers. Natalie returned them unopened. Vanessa did not call, but a letter arrived at Marigold Thorn with no return address. Natalie left it unread in the back drawer beneath invoices and ribbon spools. The shop had changed. Not because Sebastian bought it. He tried. Natalie said no. He did not argue. The next morning, a lawyer arrived with proof that her father's swill had been altered after his death. Her mother and Vanessa had forged Natalie's signature to control the business accounts. The lawyer did not say who found the documents. He didn't need to. Natalie regained full ownership of Marigold Thorn by the end of the week. By the next month, the shop was busier than it had ever been. Some customers came because of the scandal. Some came because they wanted to see the woman Sebastian Ricci had walked down the aisle. Most stayed because Natalie's flowers were unforgettable. As for the boy in the photograph, his name was Luca Hale. He was 7 years old, quiet, serious, and suspicious of everyone except the therapy dog at his foster home. The paternity record was real. Lorenzo Ricci had fathered him during a brief relationship with a woman who died before she could tell him. Sebastian found him, but he did not take him. Not at first. Natalie watched from a distance as Sebastian Ricci, feared by men twice his age, sat on a plastic chair at a foster agency holding a paper flower a child refused to give him. "You re-scaring him," Natalie whispered afterward. Sebastian looked through the observation window at Luca. "I scare everyone." "He's not everyone." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "I don't know how to be safe." Natalie looked at the little boy. "Then learn." Sebastian turned to her. For once, he had no answer. So he did, slowly, with visits, with patience he did not naturally possess, with silence when he wanted control, with protection hidden behind legal paperwork instead of locked doors. Natalie should have walked away after the danger ended. She told herself that often. She had a flower shop, a life, a heart still learning not to work for love. Sebastian had enemies, blood on his hands, and a world that would always reach for anyone standing near him. But he came to the shop every Thursday after closing, never with roses. He hated obvious gestures. The first time, he brought replacement glass for the greenhouse window Caleb had broken. The second, he brought coffee and said nothing for 20 minutes, while Natalie arranged funeral lilies and pretended not to notice him watching her hands. The third, she found him outside in the rain, sitting in his black SUV across the street, not coming in. She crossed with an umbrella. He rolled down the window. "This is creepy," she said. "I was told not to enter your shop like I owned it. So you decided to look like a threat from the curb. I am a threat from the curb." Natalie tried not to smile. "Why are you here?" Sebastian, his eyes lifted to hers. "Because I had a bad day, and this is the only place I don't want to destroy anything." The honesty stole the air from her lungs. She looked at the rain sliding over his window. Then she closed the umbrella and got into the SUV. Not because he asked, because he hadn't. For a while, they sat in silence. Finally, he said, "You should be afraid of me." "I am." His eyes moved to her. Natalie looked back. "I'm also afraid of never knowing what my life could be if I stopped choosing the safest kind of loneliness." Sebastian's breath changed. "Natalie." "No." She lifted one hand. "I'm not finished." His mouth closed. "Good. I won't be hidden. I won't be owned. I won't be your secret, your weakness, your redemption project, or the woman you protect so tightly she can't breathe." His gaze burned into hers. "And if I fail, then I leave." The words sat between them like a blade. Sebastian nodded once. "You'll need guards. I'll need respect. You'll have both. I'll need honesty. That will be harder. At least you were honest about that." He almost smiled. Then he reached into his coat and took out a key. Natalie stared at it. "No, you don't know what it opens. I know men like you don't carry small keys for small reasons." He placed it on the console between them. "It opens the front doors of St. Aurelius." Natalie went still. Sebastian looked through the windshield at the rain. "I bought the debt on the church. The arch is still there. Your flowers were removed. But the structure remains." He paused. "Tomorrow night, there is a charity event. Foster children, legal aid, witness families, people. My world usually breaks and forgets." Natalie's throat tightened. "Why are you telling me? Because the event needs flowers." She stared at him. "And because," he continued, voice lower, "the last time you entered that church, you were forced to prove you belonged. This time, you decide whether the doors open." Natalie looked at the key, then at him. Something inside her that had been locked out for years finally stepped forward. The next night, St. Aurelia's glowed under a clear sky. No rain, no locked doors. Natalie arrived in a deep green dress that fit her body because she had stopped dressing to apologize for it. Her hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. Her flowers filled the church again. But this time they were not white roses, arranged for a woman who hated her. They were marigolds, arranged in gold, bright as small suns, thorns woven beneath them. Honest beauty. People turned when she entered. Some whispered. Some stared. Natalie kept walking. At the altar, children from the foster agency placed paper flowers in glass bowls. Luca stood near Sebastian, solemn in a little black suit, holding one yellow paper bloom. Sebastian wore black, as always, but when he saw Natalie, the coldness left his face in a way no one else would have noticed. She noticed. That was enough. He walked toward her through the candlelight. Half the room watched him with fear. Natalie watched him with something far more dangerous. "Hope. You open the doors yourself," he said. She lifted the key. "I thought about leaving them shut." His eyes held hers. And then I remembered, I'm the thorn." Sebastian's mouth curved. Luca approached shyly and held out the paper flower. Natalie crouched to his level. For me, he nodded. "My dad knew your dad," he said. Natalie's eyes stung. "Yes," she whispered. "I think he did." Sebastian looked away, jaw tight. Natalie stood slowly. The ceremony began. Not a wedding this time, but a promise of protection for children, witnesses, and families who had been used as pieces on powerful men's boards. Sebastian spoke only once. He stood at the front of the church, hands clasped, voice calm and carrying. "Doors should not be weapons," he said. "Not in churches, not in homes, not in families. Tonight, Every door this foundation opens stays open. His eyes found Natalie Sess. And anyone who locks out the innocent will answer to me. The room believed him. So did Natalie. After the event, when candles had burned low and guests had gone, Natalie remained beneath the arch. Adjusting one stubborn marigold, Sebastian stood behind her. "You re-avoiding me," he said. "I'm fixing a flower. You fixed it 4 minutes ago." She smiled without turning. "You timed me. I watch what matters." Her hands stilled. The church was quiet now, full of gold, light, and shadows. Sebastian stepped closer. Not too close. Never assuming. "I am not a good man," he said. Natalie turned. No. His gaze did not flinch. "I have done things you should hate. I know. I will do more. I know that too." His voice roughened. "Then why are you still here?" Natalie looked at the man who had opened the doors when her own blood locked them shut. The man who terrified her. The man who listened when she said no. The man who was learning, painfully and imperfectly, that protection without freedom was just another cage. "Because I'm not looking for a good man," she said softly. "I'm looking for an honest one." Sebastian's eyes darkened. "That may be worse." "Probably." He stepped closer. This time, when his hand lifted to her face, he did not stop. His thumb brushed her cheek with a gentleness that looked almost violent on him, as if tenderness was something he had to wrestle into his own hands. "Natalie Brooks," he said, voice low. "The world will try to close doors on you again." She held his gaze. "I know." His other hand found hers. "But not while I'm standing there." Outside, the city moved in distant sirens and harbor wind. Inside, candles flickered beneath the flowers she had built from ruin. Natalie rose onto her twos. Sebastian bent toward her. Their kiss was not soft at first. It was restraint breaking carefully. A dangerous man learning how not to take. A wounded woman learning how not to disappear. When they pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers. For once, Sebastian Ricci looked less like a man who owned the darkness and more like a man afraid the light might leave. Natalie touched his jaw. "I'm still not yours." His eyes opened. "No," he said, "but I am becoming yours." The confession trembled through the empty church. Not loud, not polished, not safe, but true. Natalie looked toward the open doors of St. Aurelius Seine, where rain had once soaked her dress and laughter had once cut through glass. Tonight, the doors stood wide. No one had opened them for her. No one had allowed her in. She had the key now, and beside her stood the most feared man in Boston, watching the open doorway like he would burn the whole city before letting it close on her again. Natalie smiled through tears. Then she took Sebastian Ricci's hand and walked with him into the night.